In the second-floor biology lab, Peter Jansen, 23, slowly lowered the metal tongs into the glass cage. Then, with a quick jab, he pinned the cobra just behind its hood. The snake hissed angrily as Jansen reached in, gripped it firmly behind the head, raised it to the milking beaker. He swabbed the beaker membrane with alcohol, pushed the fangs through, and watched as yellowish venom slid down the glass. The yield was a disappointing few milliliters. Jansen really needed a half-dozen cobras in order to collect enough venom to study, but there was no room for more animals in the lab. There was a reptile facility over in Alston, but the animals there tended to get sick. Peter wanted his snakes nearby, where he could supervise their condition. Venom was easily contaminated by bacteria. That was the reason for the alcohol swab and for the bed of ice the beaker sat on. Peter's research concerned bioactivity of certain polypeptides in cobra venom. His work was part of a vast research interest that included snakes, frogs, and spiders, all of which made neuroactive toxins. His experience with snakes had made him an envenomation specialist, occasionally called by hospitals to advise on exotic bites. This caused a certain amount of envy among other graduate students in the lab. As a group, they were highly competitive and quick to notice if anyone got attention from the outside world. Their solution was to complain that it was too dangerous to keep a cobra in the lab and that it really shouldn't be there. They referred to Peter's research as working with nasty herps. None of this bothered Peter. His disposition was cheerful and even-handed. He came from an academic family, so he didn't take this backbiting too seriously. His parents were no longer alive, killed in the crash of a light plane in the mountains of Northern California. His father had been a professor of geology at UC Davis, and his mother had taught on the medical faculty in San Francisco. His older brother was a physicist. Peter had returned the cobra to the cage just as Rick Hutter came over. Hutter was 24, an ethnobotanist. Lately, he had been researching analgesics found in the bark of rainforest trees. As usual, Rick was wearing faded jeans, a denim shirt, and heavy boots. He had a trimmed beard and a perpetual frown. "I notice you're not wearing gloves," he said. "No," Peter said. "I've gotten pretty confident." "When I did my field work, you had to wear gloves," he said. Rick Hutter never lost an opportunity to remind others in the lab that he had done actual field work. He made it sound as if he had spent years in the remote Amazon backwaters. In fact, he had spent 4 months doing research in a national park in Costa Rica. "One porter in our team didn't wear gloves and reached down to move a rock. Bam! Terciopelo sunk its fangs into him. Fer de lance, 2 meters long. They had to amputate his arm. He was lucky to survive at all." "Uh-huh," Peter said, hoping Rick would get going. He liked Rick, but the guy had a tendency to lecture everybody. The person in the lab who really disliked Rick Hutter was Karen King. Karen, a tall young woman with dark hair and angular shoulders, was studying spider venom and spider webs. She overheard Rick lecturing Peter on snakebite in the jungle and couldn't stand it. She had been working at a lab bench, and she snapped over her shoulder. "Rick, you stayed in a tourist lodge in Costa Rica, remember?" "Bullshit. We camped in the rainforest." 2 whole nights," Karen interrupted him, "until the mosquitoes drove you back to the lodge." Rick glared at Karen. His face turned red, and he opened his mouth to say something, but didn't. Because he couldn't reply. It was true. The mosquitoes had been hellish. He'd been afraid the mosquitoes might give him malaria or dengue hemorrhagic fever, so he had gone back to the lodge. Instead of arguing with Karen King, Rick turned to Peter. "Hey, by the way, I heard a rumor that your brother is coming today. Isn't he the one who struck it rich with a startup company?" "That's what he tells me." "Well, money isn't everything. Myself, I'd never work in the private sector. It's an intellectual desert."